if you were getting ready for your first game of On Mars, or maybe you just haven't played it in a while, well then you are likely thinking, what is it I am trying to do at the start of a game of On Mars? And that's what this video is about. Also, I'm going to talk about some specific examples of what you might do on your first turn. So I'm going to share that, as well as some other rules that if you get them wrong in your first game, they really could cost you. But of course, despite watching this video, you will then go on and make the same mistakes yourself. But just because something is futile doesn't mean it's not worth trying. Or wait a minute, isn't that exactly what futile means? Well, what is better? One action on your turn or two actions on your turn? In most games, Snakes and Ladders, for example, having two goes on your turn is better than one. And in On Mars, you want to try to be doing that additional executive action on your turn. The ones on your player board, they aren't very good executive actions. So you're going to try and get some different options using the blueprints. But which blueprints? Well, maybe one that upgrades the building where your robot is at the start of the game so that you can build the upgrade quickly. Or how about going for a mine blueprint? Because that's going to give you an income of minerals, and minerals are what you need to build more upgrades. There's a mine in the middle of the board at the start of the game, and there's a sort of a race to upgrade that mine. Another thing to think about when choosing a blueprint would be to consider what research tech is available in the tech grid in orbit. Like, for example, if the tech that allows players to build more upgrades whenever they take that action, if that tech's not available, then it might be nice to get that blueprint that allows you to build more upgrades. A lot of the strategy in On Mars depends on the number of players in the game. For example, there are 6 blueprints at the start of a game of On Mars, no matter how many players are in the game. So in a 4-player game, those 6 blueprints, they're going to go in a flash. You might not get a blueprint, but you have other options. You could aim for a scientist, let the other players scrabble around for the blueprints and build those upgrades, and then you could use a scientist to just use their executive actions. But you'd want to make sure you get a scientist that matches the blueprints that the other players have taken. So in a game of On Mars, my initial goal is always to either get some blueprints or get a scientist, because that means that you'll be able to get 2 actions on your turn using that executive action rather than having just 1 action on your turn. However, alternatively, going for points early on in a game of On Mars is a viable option. The game rewards you for building a lot of different types of building early on by giving you these progress cubes, which they just track that you've built different types of building. And if you do this, those progress cubes are going to end up scoring for you multiple times during the course of the game, so it's worth doing early on. And if you pay attention to the life support system rewards, you can get 6 points and a progress cube for the first type of building built, which is not bad. For example, by building a shelter and then hitting that reward, or getting a robot and hitting that reward. And by doing this, you are making that life support system update its status, which means there'll be another 12 blueprints available, perhaps even before the other players have used their blueprints. Another initial goal is to build a shelter and to welcome a ship with more colonists, because having more colonists in a game of On Mars means that your turns will be more powerful. It would be nice to either use the tech that gives you more colonists when you welcome a ship, or to use the blueprint that makes the action a little better. Also remember, building a shelter gives you more space for resources, and on Mars you are really desperate for more space for resources. Right, now let's look at some specific examples of what you might do in your first turn of a game of On Mars. There are 8 spaces on the turn order track, 4 in orbit and 4 on the colony. And turn order is from left to right. Some spaces offer a bonus, but the further that you go up in turn order towards the left, then the less attractive the bonus. The very first space in turn order, which is on the left in orbit, it has no bonus at all. But if it was like a 4-player game and you're a start player and you want to get the blueprints, then you may have to go on this space, because the player who goes there could use their colonists, boost the blueprint action, and take 3 of the 6 blueprints. Or another nice space is going last, because there you get a really great bonus, which is to take a blueprint, and that's a bonus before round 1, so you'll get first choice out of all of the blueprints. The player who is last in turn order gets to choose where to put the shuttle at the start of the game, and if that's me and I'm on the surface, then I will put the shuttle on the surface and leave those players who are in orbit stuck up there for 2 turns, and that way I can have the colony to myself for the first 2 turns of the game, which is very good. So if players take turn order space 1 and 8, that means that before the second person gets their turn, most of the blueprints could be gone. But there are still some good options, because you don't have to go for blueprints. You could take the last orbit space and grab a 4th colonist, which would be very nice, which you could immediately use to do the resupply action, get lots of resources from the warehouse, and then head down to the colony and get some scientists. Or there's the turn order space where you get to pick up a tech tile. Imagine this specific example. You take a tech tile, then you using the bonus, and then you develop it, and then you go to the colony and build the life support system that has the reward for having developed tech, and potentially score 6 points and a progress cube. Yet another choice could be to take turn order space 7, move your robot into the center, and then just start building those life support system buildings and get loads of progress cubes for early game points. You will need a lot of colonists to do that, to keep taking that build action, but you can take a colonist back whenever you get a reward for building up the life support system. And also remember that you can use crystals instead of colonists whenever you're taking an action space. So instead of paying the cost with colonists, you can pay with a crystal. And that's one of the sort of rules that I forget often whenever I'm playing my first game of On Mars, or I haven't played in a while. And that's what we're going to talk about next in this video. However, before we do that, I would just like to remind you that you can support the channel by giving the video a thumbs up. That way, YouTube will show this video to more people. I know there's a lot of you regularly doing that for the channel, and I want to say thank you for that. Finally, let's talk about scientists and contracts, because there's some subtle rules around these. First of all, I didn't realize that you can just take an action using your scientist, even if they're just sitting on the card already. You don't have to move them, so you could just repeatedly take the same action. I was confused by a game I like called Le Havre. You may have heard of it. But no, the scientist can just sit on the card and take the action as many times as you want, turn after turn. And let's talk about the action space where you go to take a scientist or a contract. Whenever you place a colonist on there, you still have to pay for other colonists being there from the other players, which confuses me because you've got your own single little spot there, but no, you still have to pay for other people being present. You can pay crystals instead, of course, and whenever it's full up, the action slot, your colonists don't come back to players. So it's a bit of a challenge getting your colonist off that action space, which you can do by going into orbit and coming back. But you really want to be doing that as frequently as you can in order to pick up scientists and contracts because they're great. And did you catch the rule that you can put resources on contracts even if you don't have storage space on your player board? So, like if you're going to build a complex, then you often receive a lot of resources, more than you have space for. So it's really great to have a contract ready, and then you're allowed to put the resources on the contract. Even if you're not completing the contract, they can just sit on there until you can complete it on a later turn. You can't use minerals as wild when paying for a contract. And this is a rule that I've forgotten before. Whenever you pick up a contract, you have to pay a crystal. So if you have lined up your strategy to pick up that contract in your final action and you realize that you do not have a crystal to pay for it, well, then that can really hurt you. Ouch! But just you remember, Unfussy Board Games warned you. This is the first game that I've played by the designer Vital Lacerda, and I am mightily impressed. There aren't many pitfalls for beginners that you can't recover from, and at the start of the game there are a lot of good options and directions to go in. If you think about it, you barely need to have watched this video, but if you appreciated it, please do let me know with a thumbs up or subscribe. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all of the encouragement that I've had to keep on making these videos. I'll see you in the next one.